The sea has always been a place of paradox. It appears vast and empty, yet it holds countless stories. Most of those stories end in routine. A ship departs, crosses its route, and arrives at its destination. Others end in tragedy that can be explained: storms, collisions, mechanical faults, or human error. But there are a small number of events that do not fit easily into any of these categories. One such event began not with the roar of nature, but with the quiet flicker of a radar screen. On the evening in question, the control room of a coastal monitoring station was calm. Operators watched over their screens, tracking the movements of vessels across the shipping lanes. Every echo, every small blip of light represented a ship hundreds of feet long, carrying cargo, crew, and expectation. Among them was a mid-sized cargo vessel on a predictable course. Its path had been logged, its speed steady. Weather reports listed clear skies. The surface of the sea was described as calm. For the men in the control room, there was little reason to imagine that anything unusual was about to unfold. At 1942, the vessel appeared precisely where it should be. Its position matched the expected waypoint. Its heading was stable. 2 minutes later, the signal faltered. The line on the screen wavered, then blinked out. What had been a clear return was gone in an instant. No gradual fading, no distortion, nothing to suggest interference or distance. The signal simply ceased to exist. The operators acted with discipline. They checked their systems, recalibrated the radar, and compared readings across multiple displays. They waited for the echo to return, as it so often does after momentary interference, but the screen remained blank. The ship was no longer visible. In most cases, the disappearance of a radar trace is only temporary. Equipment malfunctions. Atmospheric conditions distort waves. A ship may even slip behind a larger vessel, obscured until it moves into a new position. Yet here, none of those possibilities appeared to apply. Weather conditions were stable. No larger ship was nearby. Communications remained open and strong. Other vessels in the same corridor continued to appear normally on the radar, their signals crisp and uninterrupted. The crew in the monitoring room waited for a transmission. A distress call, a coded emergency signal, even an automated beacon. None came. The silence was almost more striking than the blank screen itself. In maritime operations, ships are rarely lost without some trace, but this vessel left nothing. Later investigations would confirm the absence of evidence. No wreckage was sighted in the hours that followed. No debris drifted into nearby lanes. Satellites recorded nothing unusual. A ship of steel, carrying men and material, had seemingly vanished within minutes, leaving behind only questions. This moment marked the beginning of a debate that continues. Was it a technical fault? A sudden structural failure? Or did the sea conceal a different kind of danger, one that interferes not only with ships, but with the very instruments built to protect them? The first chapter of this mystery begins with that empty screen. A signal lost, and with it, the certainty that routine had once provided. To understand why the vessel's disappearance caused such unease, one must first examine the waters in which it was last observed. On the charts, the region appears ordinary. It is a commercial corridor used by cargo ships, fishing boats, and occasionally naval patrols. Yet behind the numbers and coordinates lies a reputation built over decades, some would say centuries. Mariners are practical people. They rely on instruments, on training, and on experience passed down from others. But even practical men and women keep stories, and this region has collected many. Compasses, they say, are not always trustworthy here. Needles that usually hold steady can drift, sometimes by only a few degrees. sometimes more. Depth sounders occasionally return erratic readings, as if the seabed beneath the keel had suddenly risen or fallen. In more recent years, GPS signals have been reported to flicker, dropping out for seconds at a time before reappearing as if nothing had occurred. None of these incidents, on their own, are extraordinary. Instruments fail everywhere. Signals fade. Human error accounts for many discrepancies, but patterns matter. And in this part of the sea, the pattern has been noted for generations. Sailors of the 19th century wrote in their logs of dancing lights above the waves. Some claim to see glowing forms beneath the water, shapes too large and too regular to be explained by known sea life. Anchors sometimes dragged in calm conditions, as if unseen currents pulled against them. When steamships became common, engineers recorded fluctuations in their compasses that could not be traced to weather or machinery. By the mid-20th century, radar was added to the list of tools, and with it came new reports. Operators logged ghost echoes, signals that appeared briefly where no ship existed, or echoes that vanished before a vessel could be identified. Naval records, though cautious, included mention of these anomalies, often annotated with phrases like instrument error suspected or no further data available. Scientists have attempted to explain these irregularities. Some point to variations in the Earth's magnetic field caused by mineral deposits deep beneath the seabed. Others note the potential release of gas from the ocean floor, which might disrupt buoyancy or even interfere with electronics. Meteorologists suggest atmospheric conditions, invisible to the eye, that bend radio waves and confuse readings. None of these explanations fully account for every detail, but each offers a possibility. For the shipping companies that pass through the region, such theories are of little comfort. A misplaced reading can delay a voyage. A sudden loss of signal can cause panic among crews. And when a ship fails to arrive, the long history of strange accounts resurfaces, ready to be linked to the latest event. Thus, when the radar trace vanished on that calm evening, the incident was not viewed as a single failure. It was added to a ledger already filled with uncertainty. A ledger that continues to grow each time the sea resists the clarity of modern instruments. When the signal failed to return, maritime protocol required immediate response. Controllers at the radar station contacted nearby vessels, requesting confirmation of visual sightings. None reported seeing the cargo ship in question. The last crew to acknowledge its presence had done so nearly 30 minutes earlier, noting its lights on the horizon. After that, silence. By early morning, the Coast Guard had been mobilized. Patrol craft were dispatched to the coordinates where the radar trace had last appeared. Aircraft joined the operation at first light, flying search patterns in widening circles. The sea, calm at a distance, revealed no obvious wreckage. No oil slicks, no floating debris, not even a lifeboat adrift. For those leading the search, the absence was striking. Ships rarely vanish without leaving some sign. Standard procedure required canvassing the shipping lanes. Radio calls were broadcast repeatedly, asking for any information. Commercial crews responded, reporting nothing unusual. Fishing boats confirmed they had seen no distress flares. Even satellites, consulted later, showed nothing out of the ordinary during the critical window. Yet small details emerged. One patrol reported finding unusual patterns on the water surface, areas where the waves seemed flattened, as if pressed down by a heavy hand. Another noted that compasses on two different vessels had behaved erratically for several minutes as they approached the search zone. These observations were recorded but not officially categorized as evidence. They were anomalies, unverified and unexplained. Families of the missing crew waited anxiously on shore. Shipping company representatives issued careful statements describing the situation as uncertain and urging patience. The press, however, quickly seized on the mystery. Headlines asked how a vessel of steel and electronics could disappear without a single call for help. For investigators, the task was complicated. Without wreckage, they could not confirm a sinking. Without survivors, they could not reconstruct events. They were left with negative evidence, what was not there. And negative evidence resists interpretation. Still, certain facts were undeniable. The vessel had been present on radar. It had vanished within minutes. No signal was received afterward. And despite an intensive search covering hundreds of square miles, no trace was recovered. Some concluded that the ship must have gone down quickly, perhaps due to structural failure. Others argued that such a sinking would almost certainly have produced debris. The absence of even a life jacket troubled many. Was it possible that the vessel had drifted outside the search zone entirely? Or that it had fallen victim to forces less predictable than weather or machinery? The official inquiry recorded the operation as inconclusive. The sea had offered nothing to explain the disappearance. And with no evidence to close the case, speculation began to grow. When an inquiry cannot produce physical evidence, attention often turns to theory. In the case of the vanished vessel, investigators and commentators alike began to search for explanations that might fit the sparse details available. The result was a list of possibilities, each grounded in science, yet none conclusive. The first line of reasoning focused on equipment failure. Radar systems, though robust, are not immune to malfunction. A faulty transmitter, a misaligned antenna, or even a temporary software error could cause a target to vanish from the screen. Yet this argument quickly encountered difficulty. Multiple radar stations tracked the ship that night, and the disappearance was consistent across them all. Independent vessels confirmed the absence. To attribute the event entirely to equipment error seemed insufficient. Others considered structural failure. Cargo ships are complex machines, and history records many cases where hulls have fractured or engines have failed. A sudden breach might drag a vessel down quickly, leaving little time to send a distress call. Still, even rapid sinkings usually produce debris, oil slicks, flotsam, or lifeboats torn free by currents. The search found none. A third theory involved natural gas emissions from the seabed. Scientists have long noted that methane can accumulate beneath layers of sediment. If released suddenly, such gas could alter buoyancy, causing a ship to lose stability. Some believe this phenomenon has been responsible for unexplained maritime accidents in the past. But once more, doubts arose. Even if gas played a role, it could not explain the simultaneous radar disappearance or the absence of wreckage. Meteorological explanations were also considered. Atmospheric conditions can bend radio waves, producing what specialists call ducting. In such cases, radar signals might travel farther than expected or skip over objects entirely. Could the vanished ship have been hidden by such a quirk of the air? The idea was plausible, but meteorological data from that evening recorded no unusual layers or temperature inversions. The most persistent speculation centered on magnetism. The region already carried a reputation for magnetic irregularities. Some geologists suggested that variations in the Earth's crust might create local distortions. These distortions, in turn, could affect both navigation instruments and electronic systems. A magnetic trap, as some came to call it, might disrupt radar, radios, and compasses simultaneously. Yet here, too, evidence was lacking. Magnetometers used during the search showed only minor variations, not the kind that would explain the disappearance of a steel hull. Each theory offered a fragment of possibility, but none provided a complete picture. Investigators were left with scenarios that answered some questions while raising others. In the absence of certainty, the inquiry cataloged the hypotheses but did not endorse any. The official record simply noted, "cause undetermined." For the public, such language was unsatisfying. For scientists, it was a reminder of the ocean's complexity. And for sailors who would cross the same waters again, it was another story added to the ledger of things the sea refuses to explain. When conventional explanations fail to convince, other narratives inevitably emerge. The story of the vanished vessel was no exception. Alongside technical reports and scientific hypotheses, more unusual ideas began to circulate. Some were rooted in folklore, others in modern speculation. None could be proven, but each reflected the human need to make sense of uncertainty. One of the earliest claims drew on the idea of a dimensional shift. Writers pointed to cases where individuals or objects were said to have slipped into another reality, sometimes briefly, sometimes permanently. Such accounts, while lacking scientific support, resonate with maritime traditions that describe ships sailing into fogs from which they never returned. The absence of wreckage in this case encouraged some to wonder if the vessel had simply moved elsewhere, into a place beyond ordinary perception. Others favored a theory more familiar to popular culture: extraterrestrial involvement. The notion that unidentified flying objects, or perhaps unidentified submerged ones, interfered with human vessels has circulated for decades. Witnesses from other maritime incidents have described strange lights above the horizon or luminous shapes beneath the waves. In the present case, no such sightings were reported. Yet the complete absence of distress signals left room for speculation. If something external had silenced the crew and disabled the ship, it might also have prevented evidence from remaining behind. A third idea leaned toward the supernatural. The sea, after all, has always been home to legends. Sailors once spoke of sea monsters dragging vessels under, or of cursed waters where compasses failed. Some modern storytellers reframe these tales, suggesting that certain areas of the ocean might be haunted by forces that resist measurement. The flattened patches of water reported during the search fit neatly into such interpretations. Whether psychological or real, they provided an image that aligned with folklore. There were also theories involving secret technology. Some commentators speculated about experimental weapons or classified projects that could disrupt radar and communications. The Cold War era produced many such rumors, and declassified documents confirmed that governments sometimes tested equipment in remote seas. Yet no evidence connected this disappearance to military activity. Still, the possibility lingered in public imagination. What unites these ideas is not proof but narrative power. They fill the gaps left by science with stories that explain absence through presence, whether of another dimension, another intelligence, or another kind of force. To the rational investigator, they remain unverified. To the storyteller, they are essential. In official reports, such notions rarely appear, but in conversations at docks, in articles written for popular audiences, and in the quiet moments of those who lost colleagues to the sea, these theories provide a form of comfort. They suggest that what happened was not random, that there was a cause, even if it lies beyond what we can measure. The disappearance of a ship is never a private matter. Cargo may belong to companies, but lives belong to families, and both quickly demand answers. In the days following the vanishing of the vessel, attention shifted from the empty radar screens to the crowded harbors and offices on land. Here, the event began to ripple outward, touching institutions, communities, and eventually the broader public imagination. Families of the crew gathered in waiting rooms and on quaysides, searching for news. Many had grown accustomed to the long silences of maritime work, but this silence was different. It was sudden, unexplained, and accompanied by the knowledge that a ship had vanished without trace. Officials spoke carefully, offering sympathy while refusing to speculate. Such restraint, though necessary, only deepened the unease. People wanted certainty. What they received were updates filled with words like inconclusive and ongoing. Shipping companies faced their own pressures. Insurance representatives asked for documentation. Clients demanded to know what had become of their cargo. In boardrooms, executives weighed costs, liabilities, and reputations. For them, the vanished vessel was not only a human tragedy, but also a logistical and financial crisis. The lack of evidence complicated every discussion. Without wreckage or confirmation of sinking, even paperwork became uncertain. Meanwhile, journalists shaped the story for a wider audience. Headlines framed the event as a mystery. Some newspapers focused on the technical details, presenting maps and diagrams to explain how radar works and how it might fail. Others leaned toward the dramatic, reviving legends of magnetic anomalies and cursed waters. Television segments interviewed former sailors who recalled strange experiences in the same region. Radio hosts invited experts and skeptics to debate on air. Public reaction varied. Some dismissed the reports as exaggeration, noting that the sea has always claimed vessels. Others became fascinated, following every article and broadcast with growing curiosity. Online forums, still new at the time, became spaces where speculation flourished. Theories ranged from the plausible to the fantastical. In this environment, the phrase magnetic trap gained traction. It provided a simple, evocative label that could explain both the technical failures and the eerie absence of debris. For the coastal communities whose livelihoods depended on the sea, the disappearance carried a practical weight. Fishermen discussed whether to avoid the area. Harbor officials debated new safety protocols. Some vessels quietly altered their routes, steering clear of the coordinates now marked in red on unofficial charts. Even without official confirmation, the perception of danger was enough to change behavior. The case also entered cultural memory. Writers referenced it in novels. Documentary filmmakers began to outline potential projects. And for the families, each retelling was both a reminder and a burden. The ship had become more than a vessel. It was now a symbol, carried not by the waves but by words. In this way, the mystery extended beyond the sea. It reached into offices, newspapers, living rooms, and imaginations. The ship was gone, yet its absence filled spaces everywhere. In the months that followed the disappearance, official attention gradually shifted elsewhere. Without new evidence, inquiries reached a point of stillness. Reports were archived, interviews concluded, and the sea remained silent. The vessel did not return. No wreckage washed ashore. Insurance settlements were negotiated, families faced the slow weight of uncertainty, and shipping schedules adjusted. Yet the questions lingered, like echoes that refused to fade. For investigators, the central issue was straightforward, yet unsolved. How could a steel ship, tracked by radar and observed by multiple stations, vanish without leaving debris or signals? The absence of physical evidence continued to undermine every hypothesis. Structural failure should have left wreckage. Equipment malfunction could not explain the agreement across different monitoring systems. Natural phenomena offered partial answers, but failed to form a complete explanation. For scientists, the event became a case study in the limits of knowledge. Theories about magnetic anomalies, methane eruptions, and atmospheric distortions remained on the table, each with some merit but none with proof. Field studies in the region recorded fluctuations, but none dramatic enough to match the magnitude of the disappearance. The phrase magnetic trap endured, not because it was proven, but because it captured imagination. For sailors, The story was a reminder of the ocean's unpredictability. Practical men spoke quietly of compasses that wavered, or of stretches of water where engines seemed less responsive. Few made public declarations, but many carried private caution. Routes were altered, even if only slightly. Precautions were increased, even if quietly unacknowledged. For the public, the mystery became part of a larger tapestry of unsolved maritime events. It joined accounts of ghost ships, unexplained sinkings, and legends of areas where navigation falters. Stories passed from one generation to another, shifting with each telling. In these retellings, the boundary between fact and folklore blurred, yet the core remained. A ship disappeared, and no one could say why. Perhaps that is why the case continues to attract attention. In a world of satellites, digital communication, and advanced navigation, the idea that a vessel can simply vanish feels unacceptable. And yet, it happened, or at least, something happened that we still cannot explain. The ocean covers most of our planet, yet vast parts of it remain uncharted in detail. Beneath its surface lie geological features, magnetic variations, and ecosystems still largely unknown. Above its waves, weather systems interact in ways that remain difficult to predict. In such an environment, mysteries are not anomalies. They are reminders of scale. The story of the vanished vessel ends without conclusion. No bodies recovered, no hull located, no certain cause determined. What remains is absence and the interpretations built around it. Some prefer science, others lean toward legend. All must accept that certainty has not been found. As the years pass, ships continue to cross the same waters. Some crews remember the tale and adjust their course slightly. Others pass without comment, and radar screens continue their quiet work, tracing echoes across the dark sea, each signal a reassurance, until the moment it is not. The horizon, after all, still holds its secrets.